Hello everyone, so welcome to my video where I'll be giving you a tour of my Megabase in Factorio. So before just delving straight into the specifics, let's just go over a bit of the settings, so the mods and the map settings used and what have you. This is the save game. You can see, it's quite a lengthy playtime. I'll quickly say that the vast majority of this is just the game just running 24/7 without barely any attention involved. Also the mods, what we see, it's a completely vanilla, unmodded playthrough that only runs on the 2.0 base game. So no space age related content. So we do not have things like elevated rails. We don't have quality, of course, no space age content. But we do get stuff like parameterized blueprints, we get train interrupts, we have the new beacon changes, and some changes to space science as well. So those are all part of the build, but otherwise it's a completely vanilla 2.0 Megabase. A quick thing about the map settings. The map settings are just completely within the normal. I've not done any cheats, no editor, spawning of ores or whatever. I did boost all of the default settings, like all the resource frequency and sizes are almost all of them are boosted significantly. That's basically it. Oh, and it's a peaceful playthrough, so there are no biters and pollution is turned off. But otherwise, it's just completely a vanilla unmodded playthrough. No cheats, no mods, nothing. Okay, so let's just start investigating the base. I'll actually just first quickly give a quick overview of the entire base. So this is a starter base, and let me just quickly zoom out. Yeah, this is the entire base. So we see here the starter base. This is the big solar field. And here we see 4 copies of a modular design for the Megabase. I'll go over them in a bit more detail later. But first, let me just quickly go over the starter base. So this is just, the starter base. It used to also produce all the science, but now it just is repurposed to just only provide the building materials that you would need to place a module of the Megabase, so one modular instance of the Megabase, one of the 4. So it's just some standard main bus, pretty basic. It used to also contain all the science, but it doesn't anymore. A bit of oil, a bit of green circuits, red circuits, blue circuits, low density structures, and a bot mole in here. And this bot mole produced all the materials for the Megabase, also including the speed modules. So that's all just done here. And you can see here at the construction train setup of the starter base, we have these buffer chests, and you can see these buffer chests are all completely filled to the brim with materials, of speed modules, of 3 modules. And all of these buffer chests combined, all the resources in these chests, they can all, they suffice to build 1 copy of the Megabase. So in fact, so this is 1 instance, actually, okay. Yeah, it's I don't have my blueprints with me because I opened this on the new laptop to allow us for a smoother recording. But the whole Megabase is actually one specific blueprint. This I can just place, and all the materials needed for it are just all contained in these buffer chests. Now, before going over the Megabase itself, let's quickly. Let's actually still discuss the bonuses in the production tab. So the research. So these are the bonuses. So it's quite a lot of mine productivity, quite a lot of robot speed, and various other boosts as well. Can pause if you want. The research tab, you can look. Yeah, so quite a lot of mining productivity research. So yeah, the base runs at like a 10k signs per minute speed. So we can see indeed from this that this is actually 1,000 hours. So we have 1,000 hour constant consumption graph of all the science packs at 10k signs per minute. So if we do some quick maths, one of these builds produces 2.5k signs per minute. We just over it. Now, yeah, this is from bonuses. You can also quickly go to the all-time production tab. So these are some pretty ridiculous numbers, if I say so myself. I mean, almost 150 billion copper wire, almost 100 billion copper plates, 10 billion red circuits, almost 1.9 billion of each of the science packs. Okay, so let's now look at the power tab. So we see we have completely powered the base using just solar panels. There's also a bit of steam going on. Also have a bit of steam engines, but that's only basically used to burn wood. The base itself just runs completely on solar. So if you go over to the solar build, so this is where the solar panels and the accumulators are being built, or were being built. So it's just some simple local production where it's the raw materials coming in, so the oil and the water, and all the solar panels and accumulators coming out. So yeah, you can also see a shit ton of solar panels and accumulators in these chests. They're like 100,000, I believe, of each, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, the reason for that is that during the construction phase, there were all these roboports in here, but also a buffer chest that contained a bunch of construction materials to speed up the construction process. And well, when I was done with the solar farm, I also deleted all the buffer chests, and all the materials ended up being here, which are quite a lot. Yeah, so the other materials were for the solar panels, so the substations and the roboports and some other things. They're just they were just trained in from the starter base with some logic to govern when the trains arrived. Yeah, so that's basically the solar. So let's just basically we'll hop over to the build. So the main idea of the build, and I should actually give a shout out to Imp for his belt-only Megabase, as shown on Exterminator's YouTube channel, which I'll also link below. And it's basically the idea to sort of work in these columns. We actually saw it a little bit here. So you have this is an instance where you have the raw materials just coming in, and it's just one big column. And at the end, you have the finished product. In this case, solar panels is coming out, and you try to maximize direct insertion of the builds. And yeah, so that's an idea that I took from Imp. Various other things are different still. So for example, I use trains to supply the build, and I have a modular design that's all different from Imp's designs. But okay, let's let the copium stop. Just let me get on with the base. Okay, so this is where, for example, the red and green signs are made. So we can actually go into a bit of detail here. So we have just a shared input belt, and it's just direct insertion. So the copper smelter, the gears, we have this one shared smelter that also feeds the gears from below. So you can share on an entity doing this, and a third entity, a third machine making the signs, and then we switch to green signs, which also has only direct insertion. So I actually see a bit of shared overlap in these builds. So this one gear machine feeds both this machine and this one. Oh, and we see some achievements because I'm running this on a new laptop. Okay. So in a couple of minutes, I got the 20 million solar panel achievement, 20 million green chip achievement. That's kind of funny. Okay. Yeah, we also see here, I kind of like this quadruple, this quadrant, would you say, of direct insertion, where there's one iron smelter just does these three things at once, and it all just feeds with direct insertion into each other. I have this one copper machine feeding two green chip machines, and it just goes on a bit like this. And at the end, it's just red and green signs out. And this is just repeated 8 times, 1 time per cargo wagon. And this whole pattern of the build is just repeated throughout. So then we get to military science. Yeah, so let's actually just go over this. Yeah, it's actually not running. I could change that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, why not actually? So I'm gonna change the active research to follow robot count. One little caveat before I do this though, is that like this research is twice as fast to research as all the other infinite researches. It only has a 30-second research time compared to like 60. So what happens is, well, when I do this, not only will this start to go on, but we'll also see a huge spike in the production, which is just temporary because like the labs can chew through a buffer of science packs. But over time, this will just stabilize again to 10k science packs per minute being consumed at a rate, while only sort of half of the labs are actively running. So again, we have just this setup of the raw materials coming in. So we pre-process the walls on this belt, which gets squiggled around, and then we prepare some yellow ammo on the belt. So the walls and the yellow ammo are prepared, but besides that, it's still the raw materials. And then we just through some direct insertion, we make the military sign. So you see here the red ammo, yellow ammo, its inputs, the copper and the steel, and it all just flies through with direct insertion. The grenades are also just made, and the walls are pulled from the belt. And, well, that's basically just military science. I think this is copied 3 times. So yeah, military science just pops out at the back. And that's military science. I'll go over the trains in a bit though. I'll first just cover the science builds. So let's actually just continue. And yeah, so this is blue science. So now we have oil processing involved. So you see that just all the raw materials are just being trained in, even the liquids. So for blue science, we have iron, coal, copper, water, and crude oil. All in not that much, all in not that high amounts. Yeah, so first some basic oil processing, and then the gas and the water both get converted into plastic and sulfur. And then we also prepare a bit of gears on the belt. And after that, it's just direct insertion. So we see here this little triangle with direct chips just being made, with also the local smelting of for the green chips and the wire. So sulfur from the belt, and then engines coming from the top. So this is direct insertion of the steel and the pipes, and the belts, the gears are they just get pulled from the belt. It would not be feasible to also have direct insertion locally with the gear production. It would just not fit with the beacons, and this still fit. I mean, this one machine has 11 beacons, and we can still manage this direct insertion of 2 ingredients. But yeah, so we have to do it like this. And then this gets copied a bunch of times. So also a nice detail about this, which I really like, is that this one copper smelter, it does two things at once. It simultaneously feeds the iron for the engines below, but it also feeds the iron for the green circuits for the build above. And this just gets repeated like this. So you win on entities by having this overlap, which is actually quite nice. So I think there are like 7 copies of this build in this instance. So 7 machines making blue science. And yeah, that is blue science. Okay, so now we'll start arriving at the big players. So this is purple science, as you can immediately deduce probably from just the sheer amount of iron ore. Interestingly, no water. If you just use basic oil processing for purple science, it's just a crude oil in, plastic out thing as far as oil goes. Okay, so let's just delve into this. So first, it's so cramped here. It actually was. This was one of the most challenging ones to make, just to make all the belts fit. But somehow it still all worked. So first we have just basic oil processing to turn the crude oil into gas, and then we have some brick smelting, which is done for the electric furnaces, which is prepared on a belt. And then we start steel smelting. We'll have a lot of steel smelting. So the steel smelting first is done first the output is on a shared belt with the bricks, which will be for the electric furnaces. So let's actually keep track a bit of how much of the iron ore. So we have 3 belts of iron ore coming in, and we start the smelting. So we smelt, we swap to half a belt, and steel. And then this is the end of the first belt. So it just quits, and this magically aligns with the steel supply for electric furnaces. So this is now the belt of steel and bricks for the furnaces. And then we continue steel because we need more steel also for the rails. Continues. Next, second iron belt. It continues. This is the end, and then the third one scoots over. And after this happens, there's actually finally enough room to do some reorganization of some older belts. I mean, this stone remainder of the brick smelting is still just going through the mill here, and here finally it's merged onto the steel belt for the rails. Coals scooting over, and we see here the last iron belt also continuing with the steel smelting for the rails. So this continues a little bit. Yeah, okay, this is the end of steel smelting. So let's also just quickly zoom out so we can see. So this here up to here was steel smelting. So it's, I don't know, more than half the length of the build, just purely steel smelting. Okay. With that, we continue. Still have the gas, and the gas now finally gets used because we're making red chips. So the red chips are made completely with direct insertion of all the raw materials, with the exception of the gas being just being used directly. I mean, I don't have a refinery making the gas locally here as well. That would not really make sense. But besides that, it's completely like local direct insertion based on the raw materials. So we have iron ore, copper ore, coal and gas to make red chips. And we also see we have this build flipped. So we have one plastic machine feeding 2 machines at once. And yeah, this just works. So we have a bunch of these, I think 9 or 10 or so of these builds. These builds making red chips for the productivity modules and the furnaces. So we're almost done now, where the electric furnace. Electric furnaces can now be made, and then we have the productivity modules, and then all that remains is still the rails and actually making the science packs, which can now be done quite cleanly, just locally, with direct insertion, with all the steel and the stone prepped. Yeah, this is just iron ore, stone, and steel is being used to make the rails and then the purple science. So that is purple science, which is quite a long build. Okay. Then let's move on to yellow science. So yellow science, we finally need advanced oil processing, which somehow still fit in the same size layout that we used previously. So, okay, so what do we need for yellow science? We need lubricant. So the heavy oil gets processed into lubricant and also gets cracked. So we see no pumps or circuits or anything involved here. It's just that both machines compete for the same amount of heavy oil, but that's completely fine because you need so little lubricant. And then all the light oil just gets cracked, and then we have the gas together with the remainder of the water. That's also used for the cracking and the processing. So the gas and the water combines and makes sulfuric acid and plastic. So that's all the oil processing done. And then, right, so we have lubricant, we have a pipe of sulfuric acid and plastic, and then onto the builds. So first we start with low density structures, which is made just local smelting. Aside from the plastic, everything is done locally. We have a bunch of these builds, and up to here. Yeah, okay. So that's low density structures. The copper merges on this belt. Some reorganization here. And then we start some smelting, which is preparing for blue chips. So, funnily enough, this is actually the first time we see iron plates on belts. Well, the starter base excluded, but for this main build, for the actual Megabase, this is the first time we see iron plates on belts. In all our instances, direct insertion just took care of the plates immediately. So we prepare some belts. So, by the way, why is it necessary in this case? And the reason is just you need so many green circuits for blue circuits, and it's just not feasible to have the smelting directly inserting in the green chip machines. It's just not feasible. The smelter are just way too slow to keep up. So you would get way too many machines involved in the actual production of the chips. It would just not make sense. That's why we prepare the smelted plates first. So smelting, and here we finally are. So this is done with the smelting, and we have two shared belts of iron and copper plates. We have the plastic, we have the acid, and with that we just immediately make blue chips. So we have this nice little quadrant here where just only direct insertion of all these things. You see here, the plates feed the wires and the green chips, and the plastic comes in here, and the acid through here, and that's just blue circuits. And we have 4 of these, and then we're 2/3 of the way done in terms of ingredients for yellow science. So what we still need is the flying robot frames. And for that, we first prepare some engines and some green circuits on a belt, which then gets made into electric engines. So we now have a prepared belt of green chips and electric engine units, and they end up making the robot frames. So the robot frames, right, they need 4 materials. It's quite a complicated recipe. The engines and the green circuits, they are prepared on a belt, but the steel and the batteries, they are just made locally. And then these robot frames are just directly inserted into this machine, and the other two ingredients come from the belt. Again, we have the flip build thing going on, where this one copper smelter feeds two battery machines. But yeah, and then this is copied again, so 4 machines making yellow signs in total, and that is yellow signs. Okay, so finally let's go over with, last but not least, space science. So before actually going into this, this build was actually impacted quite significantly by the 2.0 changes of the game, because since 2.0 the rocket control units are they're just not, they have been removed from the game, and that actually makes it a bit cheaper, the recipe, because you don't need that many red circuits that would otherwise go into the RCUs. So that actually helps, and it also allows us to make also the satellite production in line, just together with the rocket parts. Just do everything in one go. Where, for example, in Imps Megabase, you can see that those two things are separate, and I think that's just because it wouldn't otherwise be feasible with the throughput in the setup. But now it is, so that's good. But okay, let's go into the build. So we have the advanced oil processing again. Very cramped, but somehow it still works. So all the heavy oil just gets cracked immediately, we don't need it. And it's a bit of a similar situation with yellow signs. Just this time we have the oil processing ending up in light oil and sulfuric acid and plastic. Also, there's a bit of wire action going on, because we need to crack light oil to gas, but also keep enough for the rocket fuel production. But that's just pretty basic. Also with the, not so recent change now, but you can just link the circuit wire to the actual assembling machine, so there's also no need for a pump in the setup. Just a simple wire on the tank does the job. And then, this part is very similar. Low density structures, a little bit more than for yellow signs, but it's still basically the same build. And all reorganization. Then we have the rocket fuel, so the light oil just gets, which is just light oil in, rocket fuel out, using the solid fuel from light oil recipe. And that makes 2 of the 3 ingredients of the rocket parts. And then again we have blue circuits. We actually need quite a bit more blue circuits than we needed for yellow signs, so we will see actually that we have more smelting going on. So in this case we actually have 3 belts of iron and copper going in. And actually designing this part was probably one of the most challenging things, because if I recall correctly, sort of the same setup as with the yellow signs, but now I have 7 machines making blue chips, and I have 3 belts. And the thing was that one of these shared belts, cannot supply 3 of these machines. So you had to sort of, right? But it can supply 2 of them. It can also supply 2.5 of them. So I ended up going like the first 2 belts feed the first 5 machines with splitter shenanigans going on, and then this 3rd belt will do the last 2. But I'll just show you, why not? So 2, 3, 4, and then we see here a sneaky little splitter, and then 5. So the splitter is really needed to sort of balance the load and make sure that the 2.5, that one, to make sure that like one of these belts can feed 2.5 of these machines. And then this one belt scoots over for the last two. And actually, yeah, this also is a bit funny because the belt goes round and round. And this is because, well, this is 7 tiles, right? So 3, 1, 3, and then 1 again. So I can only pull off this belt on one side, right? This is already max underground length. So because this inserter is already here, I can also place an inserter here that grabs the iron from the other side. And here that was just resolved by using both belts in an alternating way. So here the copper gets from this belt and the iron from this, and then for the previous build it was the other way around. It's iron for this and copper from this. But for the last two, this had to be done differently using this go around method, but it works, so that's great. Okay, so then we have all the ingredients for the rocket parts done, and we just need a bit of accumulators, again for the local smelting, local production going on. We need solar panels, so we prepare a bit of steel, only a little bit, a couple smelters, and yeah, that's solar panels. And finally we have radars, and it actually combines into the space science build. So how does this work? Actually the circuits are a bit too complicated to go over, but yeah, so it's 1 rocket silo per 2 columns, and using circuits, they're completely configured so that like no disbalance can occur between the lanes, right? It's very important that if you do this kind of thing, both columns get pulled their resources from, like the one silo pulls their resources completely equally from both the columns. Like if that would not happen, you would just get a disbalance or accrue over time, and then would completely screw up the build because you're linked to these cargo wagons, right? If these cargo wagons would, if you would get this balance between how fast this one unloads, and you don't have control over, well, how that happens, in which direction, and anything, it just becomes a mess. So the circuits take care of that. Yeah, that's just it for now. If you want more explanation of this, I can go into this in the comments. I've also in the attached documents there are some. I think I go into it a little bit more. Actually, I'll just click on the things, and then if you can really want to figure out how it works, you can deduce it yourself. So this is basically an SR latch based on a timer. So okay, let's quickly just try a little bit of the basics. So it's set up in a way where only if all of these chests have enough materials in them, so enough for one launch, only then will, based on a timer, the input be governed. So this is basically just an SR latch that uses a global time. So here's an explanation if you want to pause and go into detail. So yeah, just quickly click over all these combinators so you can have a look at how it's all set up if you really want to. But yeah, that is basically the whole build. So yeah, in terms of science production. So, well, how do all the science specs now meet up? Well, they just meet up on belts. They just go over here, do this nice little X shape, and merge onto these labs. Now, you see here I have this sort of buffering situation going on. This is circuited to make sure that all the lanes are actually being consumed at an equal rate. And it's mainly important for this robot research, because the labs will try to consume everything they can, and that can become a bit dangerous because then some imbalance might be able to accrue. So this setup prevents against that. These are only allowed to go on if all of them are allowed to go on. Right. So these inserters that output the science packs into this build, they can only all be on or all be off for the balancing. The space science, however, is trained in, and this is also comes from above, and that is due to a change in 2.0 where, well, the science production is still very similar. Right, it's still just one satellite becomes 1,000 space science. However, the space science doesn't just appear in the rocket silo. It actually lands inside the cargo pod, which is here. So all the space science of the entire game has to pass through this one entity, which sort of makes true modularity impossible. But in this case, it's really not so bad, because you can just train the space science to the various locations. So this is one central space science distribution center, if you will, using just bots to distribute the space science and the trains. And these trains, they just pass through these unloading stations for all the instances of the build. And that's just that. I mean, it's quite basic. And it's quite a bit of length of these trains to pass, but I mean, these trains take like 4 hours or so to fill. It should be noted all the rocket silos, they are on the same timer, so all the space science just enters the things simultaneously, roughly simultaneously. All right, so let's actually now delve into the trains a little bit, because that's still lacking. So no, is this bad? I hope it's not bad. I don't think it's bad. It just worries me a little bit. I hope this is just a temporary jam. I think it's actually a temporary jam. Okay, I was worrying from a thing. Yeah, putting on the follow robot count increases the throughput of the trains, so I was a bit worried. Actually, yeah, so it's alright. This is also fine. Okay, I think it's all good. But yeah, so what is the setup of the train? So we have just mines of raw materials with the miners just directly inserting into the trains. So we just have these mines just being here. Also, the mining productivity, these load in insane speeds. It's kind of ridiculous. Oh, and actually, speaking of the mines, this alert is actually a really good timing. So all these builds, they are numbered. So this first build is labeled number 0, which is also reflected in, for example, the names of the train stations. Right? 0 unload, 0 copper unload, and here it's 1 iron unload, and similarly for the mines. So this alert, it means that this mine is running low. So for now, this will take hours and hours for it to actually be a problem. But for now, just let it set on 10k or maybe 20k. I don't know. So now the alert is fine again. But yeah, so all these mines, they just provide all the materials. And the trains, they go in this big counterclockwise roundabout fashion. So you can see that all the trains, they just pass through their respective unloading stations, and they unload, being distributed on these 2 outgoing tracks. And the empty trains just all output onto these onto this outer ring. And then this outer ring has various branch points to all the mines. And so, for example, yeah, so this train, it branches off towards a mine, and then it will come back filled with copper, and it will enter the ring again, complete the round, and go into this massive centralized stacker. So see here all these trains just coming in. And well, we also now come to one of the favorite parts of the build, and that is this intersection. So here all the trains of all the raw materials, they're all centrally gathered. And there is one lane per science production build. So we have the red and green science is the first lane, then the second lane is for blue science, the third lane, then for blue science, this one's military. But yeah, so these trains beforehand, they don't know where they're going, right? They're just like, okay, I want to go to a coal unloading station, and he doesn't yet know which one it is, but one of the coal unloading stations at some point will free up, and then it will just pass to that particular one. And yeah, this intersection, like the multiple trains can just pass through this simultaneously as long as they're passed through and intersect. The chain signals just take care of this completely fine. And yeah, this just works smoothly. So for some more high throughput situations, there are like 2 trains. So we have like one extra buffer inline train. For example, the copper unloading station goes really fast. So there's one copper unloading station feeds 2.5 belts. So that's quite high throughput. You also see these cargo wagons, they unload in a matter of seconds. And so in that case, there's always a second copper wagon in place. So the train limit of this one is actually 2, while for a lot of other train limits it's just set to 1. So yeah, that's that. I can actually go a bit over the how it works with the. Sorry, always happens. It's going. I can actually go over the train schedules a bit. So actually, this all works with train interrupts. So let's go over, for example, the first train group. So this is belonging to a group, the ore trains of build 1, of build 0. And we see it's just had one static station it goes to. It's just the ore mine, and these are all shared in name. So if I just quickly, oh yeah, okay, this is now visible. So these are all shared and have the same name. So it's just one big group of ore mines. It's fluid. This is again ore, and it doesn't matter what the content is, right? And using train interrupts, we have these generic trains. So we have the ore unload interrupt that checks that if you're at an ore mine and you're leaving there and you have some cargo, you go first to the corresponding stacker, which is here, and then immediately after to some unloading station. And that just completely does it. We also have the fuel refill, which is a bit more complicated setup, but it makes sense if you think about it a bit, because you want the trains to pass to the refill station if the fuel is low. You can also see it only will pass to it if the refill station is not full. And this can in fact only, this could pose an issue, right? But I mean, one of these trains can like make so many rounds and trips on one unit of nuclear fuel that this will in practice never be an issue. There's just not enough trains to clog up this thing every time based on that. So that's the refueling. So and also the fluid trains have a completely similar setup. So they form their own groups, of course. Different types of trains. They have the similar fluid unloading interrupts, but the fuel interrupt is shared between those. yeah, that's basically it. So yeah, let's actually go over to one last thing. That is actually the fuel station. So in here we see this resupply of the fuel. So this refueling station just has all the nuclear fuel on the belt, which gets supplied from the central place. And that is brought here. So this nuclear fuel build, it's a tiny little setup that just produces the nuclear fuel. So we add near water, we have an oil field, we have uranium ore and iron ore. And using advanced oil processing, some cracking, and making the solid fuel from petroleum gas for the rocket fuel, we can just make this a self-contained setup. No need for circuits or anything. Just machines to machines. Again, these two machines can vie for the same light oil supply, which is completely fine because you need only a tiny smidge of light oil. Now, the petroleum gas also gets used to make sulfuric acid together with this iron. Excuse me. And then we end up with rocket fuel and sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid goes up for the uranium, and then we just have one machine doing co-production enrichment, which provides enough of the nuclear fuel for 10k cycles per minute, which I find is quite fascinating. You really need not that much nuclear fuel. It lasts a long time. So yeah, this is just a simple nuclear fuel setup. We also see this little belt that feeds the fuel train itself, and also this is the belt that passes through the space science train. So these also get fueled and don't need to pass through some other refuel station or what have you. Yeah, finally also we have, here is the sort of clocking central station. So this radar is also used to transfer the signals of the clocking that's used for clocking at the various builds. So they all run at the same time. Yeah, I think that's basically it. So this is the base. So if you have any questions, please feel free to send a comment, to just ask me anything. As long as it's related to the game, I'll do my best to answer. I'm happy to answer your questions. So yeah, that's basically it. So thanks for watching.